So I'm going to talk about the new legislation, and some of you probably think, oh God, that sounds really boring, but hopefully not because you're here, so that's a good sign. I think the thing to remember is that we've had health and safety legislation in this country for a long time, and if you read the newspaper in the last few months, you'd think this was the first piece of health and safety legislation we've ever had in this country. Now, you can tell by the look of me that I've been knocking around for a while in this space, about 25 years. And when I was an inspector in the 90s, as I say to the guys at work, and they roll their eyes every time I say it, we had the Health and Safety Act. Before that, we had the Factories Act. So it's not new. And I just want to reiterate that with you. It's not like from the 4th of April we started caring about health and safety. A lot of you have been doing really well in this space. So, all those scaremongers out there, don't listen to them. They're just there to wind you up, to be perfectly honest. So look, let's have a look at the new legislation, in particular how it relates to occupational health on your work sites. Feel free to ask questions, otherwise jot them down, and then we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So this is your chance to ask some questions, okay? So the new legislation, so the Act came in on the 4th of April. It was going to come in on the 1st of April, but we thought maybe the 1st wasn't a good idea for fairly obvious reasons. I'm not quite sure if you'd have taken it that seriously. So the 4th of April it came in. For us, it's just business as usual, really, to be perfectly honest. That be fair, guys? There's a lot of inspectors sitting down here, so feel free to pick on them afterwards and ask them lots of questions. They're a good bunch, most of the time, and you can check things out with them. But that Act came in, it's been in for a few days. We're just continuing on as we are pretty much. But what I want to do today is point out some of the key changes that are there, particularly in relation to occupational health. I'll talk about the regulations briefly, the focus areas that our inspectors will be looking at when they're out on site with you, and when we'll ask for health monitoring and workplace exposure monitoring, and what those two things are, because we often get them really mixed up. Does that sound okay? A bit better. Okay, 4th of April. So what does that mean in terms of you managing health and safety out on your site, in particular occupational health? So look, the main section of the Act that has changed is Section 36. And if you can't get your head around anything else in this particular piece of legislation, have a look at Section 36, okay? That's the piece you need to know. Read it. It's not that hard to read. We've got some good fact sheets, some good material on our website, some stuff out there in the foyer by the tea and coffee machines. Have a look at that. It's about making sure that your workers are safe and they're healthy and everybody goes home in one piece. That's pretty reasonable, isn't it? Does everybody want to go home at the end of the day? Because this week, one person will die in a work accident and 10 people will die from a work-related disease. So the people at that table stand up. Do what I say. Honestly, that's slow. So see all those people, that number is going to die this week in New Zealand from a work-related disease. You stand up. Everyone does what I say, it's great. That's the person one person will hurt themselves at work and die, not you, love, hopefully. And you can sit down, just in case I'm tempting fate.
Can we sit down?
Oh no, you can stand up for the rest of it. Yeah, sit down. I think sometimes we just need to look at that. I mean, 10 people is a hell of a lot, isn't it? And for who has less than 10 people in their business? Less than 20? A few of you, I'm sure. So imagine if half your workforce died this week. That would have a significant impact on your workforce, wouldn't it? One person dying has a significant impact, let alone 10. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the key word that you need to be really aware of with the new legislation is PCBU, which is a person in control of a business or undertaking. Drives me nuts. I don't know who thought of that. It's just too hard. It's a bit hard to remember. But PCBU, get that in your head, okay? You're all PCBUs. All you people out there who have a business, own a business, run a business, sole traders, self-employed, you are PCBUs, okay? Which means under this legislation you have key responsibilities to ensure the health and safety of people on your site. Quite simple. You can't opt out of it. You can't say it's not me, it's him. If you're on a big, say, Fletcher's site, you can't say, no, it's not us, it's Fletcher's. That's not how it works anymore, people. So have a look at that. So there's some notes on it. And as far as reasonably practicable, that's one of the key parts of the Act. The old Act said all practicable steps. This talks about reasonably practicable, trying to make it a bit easier for you to manage health and safety on a day-to-day basis, taking reasonably practicable steps. So there's some information out there on that. And you can't hurt other people on that site. I spoke to some guys the other day who are tilers. They said they're in the bathroom at a residential site and nobody talks to each other on site at a residential site. So they're in the bathroom doing work. There's some electricians on site, some plumbers and some painters. And I said, well, how do you all coordinate what you're doing? Oh, no, we don't talk to each other. Good God. And I said, what about morning tea? Oh, no, we all sit in a different area. Sound familiar? That needs to stop, quite simply. This Act says that has to stop. So when you're on site, you need to just talk to each other, for God's sake. It's not rocket science. Coordinate what's going on so that people know what's going on. I was on a big Hawkins site the other day with a group of foremen. They were really organised. I mean, it was a big site, but there were lots of small companies. The foremen all got together and spoke to each other, planned the day, knew what was going on, knew when the access would be blocked, knew when the trucks were arriving, knew what was going on. It took them 10 minutes. That's not hard, is it? And they knew what was going on for that day, and that makes a hell of a difference to those guys, they said. It's much better than it used to be. This Act insists that you do that. And it doesn't have to be written down, it doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't have to be difficult. It's purely standing there with a cup of coffee in your hand, if you like, having a conversation in the morning about what's going on that day. And if things are going to change, go and talk to the other foreman. Let them know what's going on. And let your workers know what's going on. They quite like to know that. Okay, so the Act in relation to health monitoring, to the health of your workers, I'll just read it. Basically says that the health of workers and the conditions at the workplace are monitored for the purpose of preventing injury or illness of workers arising from the conduct of the business or undertaking. Who offers health monitoring to their staff? Yep, a few. Who has got good safety, reckons they've got reasonably good safety systems in place? Oh, come on, more than that, for God's sakes. Better be more. Who reckons their occupational health systems and processes and procedures are as good as, if not better, but certainly as good as their safety procedures? Oh, no one. Great. Right. Okay, so that's probably good. Did you put your hand up? Good on you. One person. Where are you from? You're very brave. Great, that's good. So that's what we want at the end of this today, that you will have some ideas on how to move forward and make health like safety. For too long in this country, we've been just focusing on safety. Would that be reasonable to say that? That's where our focus has been, hasn't it? But what did I show you before? This week, 10 people die from an illness and 1 person dies from an injury. Maybe you just need to have a think about that. Okay, let's have a look. So what is health monitoring? So look, I'm always banging on about this, and for those of you who know me, you probably think, oh, here she goes again. But I am a registered nurse. That's where I started life. My working life. I wasn't born one. God. That'd be scary, wouldn't it? And I'd probably been put back, actually. But I started my working life as a registered nurse, and I've seen people die. Quite simply, I've seen people die from lung cancer, as a number of you have in this room, from really serious diseases, and a lot of them have been related to workplaces. And one of the simple ways that you can detect occupational illness or potential illness is to do health monitoring in your workplace. It's not expensive, and some of you bang on about how expensive it is. I'm tired of that. It is not expensive. You can get 2 or 3 people done in an hour for about $100. That's not expensive when you're talking about the life of your workers. If those workers aren't there, and if they get sick and die, that will have far more impact on your business than spending $100 for 2 or 3 people to get a hearing and lung function test done. Probably get 2 people done in an hour. Okay? It's not that bad, so I challenge you on that, and our inspectors get that all the time. So it's not acceptable. Sorry, it's not that expensive. So when we talk about health monitoring, we're asking for a baseline to be done. So when the person first starts work, at least within the first 3 months, because some of you have the 90-day trial thing going, and I don't blame you, to be honest, but you can use that. When they've been there for 90 days, then do the baseline. And then you need to do annual testing. So basically what we're saying is that if your workers are regularly exposed to, for example, noise and airborne contaminants such as dust, solvents, fumes, chemicals, that you must do health monitoring. And the Act says that you must, okay? You have to manage risk. That's the key part of this Act, it's about managing risk. So you assess your risk. Michelle's going to talk a bit about that later on. and then you get some health monitoring done, okay? Probably you guys would issue notices for this a lot, wouldn't you? Yeah, a lot. Who's had a notice for it in this room? There you go. You've got a whole lot of people you can go and visit over the next few weeks. It's all right, I won't give them your names. So, yeah, look, if you've got any questions about that as we go, or when we finish, come and nab me. And there are some providers in the room. Put your hand up if you're a service provider doing health monitoring or workplace exposure monitoring. Okay, so there's some hands there. There's some information out there. Feel free to nab those people, okay? And they'll talk to you about the services that they provide. We don't do it. Service providers do it. Now, it must include a questionnaire, and it must be done by a competent person, not someone who's just rocked in off the street and taken a fancy to doing hearing tests. They have to be qualified, they have to be experienced, and that's up to you as an employer to make sure that they are. Okay, this is not health monitoring. It's great to have it, brilliant if you have it. What I'm seeing, though, is a lot of companies have these things in place, what I call wellbeing, but they don't have the basics in place. Who has this stuff in place? Workplace wellbeing. Who does cholesterols, blood pressures, blood sugars, those sort of things? No one. Right, okay. I've lost my sort of emphasis on that. But a lot of companies do this, and it's great to have, as I say, but please make sure you've got a health monitoring program in place before you put this in, okay? There are unfortunately, some service providers promoting that you do this stuff before the other. That's not correct, okay? You need to have an occupational health program in place. So great things to do, go out and do them, but get the other stuff sorted first. So look, we won't ask for workplace exposure monitoring to be done as a rule. We won't come in and issue notices madly for it. The main reason we will issue notices for workplace exposure monitoring is when we're not sure that the controls are working. Okay, so what we use in WorkSafe is what we call a control-based approach, where we want you to look at the simple controls that you can have, and there's going to be more information on that soon, rather than go out and spend thousands on monitoring. Okay, we'll ask for monitoring if there's been a serious illness, where someone's been, say, breathed in a lot of fumes. We'll ask for it then in most instances, but we're not going to routinely ask you to do it. Okay. There is some confusion out there over that. We want you to get those controls in place. Nick's going to talk about some of that. The people out in the corridor can also talk to you about some of the simple controls you can have in place, especially around the airborne contaminants. So just bear that in mind. It includes personal, so it's like they put a little clip onto someone who's, say, working with, say, welding, and that monitors the exposure to the fumes over the course of the day. They might do it for, say, 3 or 4 days. The static sampling is you put a little monitor into an environment and it just monitors the environment. It has its uses, static sampling, but personal sampling is far, far more useful. So just bear that in mind if you're using it. But get a good advice if you're going to do this monitoring. For a lot of you, I don't think you'd need to do it, but you need to get really good advice and make sure that people know what they're doing, that they're qualified. So when will inspectors ask for it? This is just to give you an overview for the monitoring, to check if workplace control measures are working, to prevent and detect ill health. So it will detect early signs of potential, say, lung function disease, the lung function testing. It will detect early signs of hearing loss, for example. So that's a really important part of it. It's not the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. If you want to stop your workers getting sick, the health monitoring, the personal health monitoring, will actually pick up early signs of potential disease. It does have the ability to do that. Training and education. If you have an occupational health nurse, and that's an occupational health nurse is someone who's competent, experienced and qualified, and you as an employer have every right, and you should ask, for evidence of experience and qualification so that the people you have coming into your workplace to do your monitoring know what they're doing. You need to do that as an employer. And the nurse will do training. She'll do some education of your workers, especially if they take along their PPE. It's a really good chance for them to talk to a health professional. Remember that nurses are health professionals, that's a key thing. And a lot of workers never see a health professional, especially in the construction sector. And that's what we've found with a lot of the work that we've been doing, that many workers don't have a GP in Christchurch. We have a lot of migrant workers in Christchurch. And many of them just go, I don't know who mum goes to. That's what the guys say to me quite often, or the wife. I'm not sure who the wife goes to. So this is a good chance to get in front of a health professional for a reasonable cost, and it does have some really good impacts. It gives you some good data. So you get a report, and it will tell you what the results are from your health monitoring. And that means that you can look and think, hey, are things working? Am I managing my dust? Am I managing my noise? If you get a whole lot of problems coming back, you can think, hey, something's going on here. And that occupational health nurse can help you with assessing your risks out there and managing them and getting things working for you as well. Really important. And it gives workers a chance to talk to a health professional, talk to their employer about any concerns they might have out there. Can you force people to have health monitoring? No, you've got to have consent. So just remember that. They have to consent to it. You can offer it. They have to consent. But if someone refuses to have it, I do suggest that you document that and put it on their personal file that they've refused to have it. But keep offering it to them every year anyway. Okay, really important. So as a rule, if our inspectors come out and they see a dusty workplace, they're in a noisy workplace, they will be asking for health monitoring to be done. Baseline and annual, and Nick will talk a bit about that as we go. So what are we looking at? What are our focus areas? What we decided on WorkSafe was that we couldn't do everything at once. I mean, some bright sparks out there think we should do everything, but that's not going to work. So we thought, let's just focus on 2 or 3 small things, they're not really that small, but 2 or 3 things that we can do and do really well. And I think we're getting there, to be honest. I mean, I've been with WorkSafe for 2.5 years, and in that time, I've seen a huge progress made, especially in the management of dust. When I first started, it was pretty appalling, to be honest, and I think the inspectors are nodding at me as I sit here. And people just, all they'd do was plonk a mask on if you were lucky. And that was all that people did to manage dust. Heaps more is going on out there, so well done, people. That's great to see. Noise, I think we could still do better in the noise space. There's still too many people running around with grade 5 hearing protection on and all shouting at each other because nobody could hear each other. In most instances, you don't need grade 5, so do consider that, but we'll talk about that. Okay, so what are we looking at? So clean air. So that's a good catch-all. So basically anything in the air on a construction site that could make you sick. So what's out there? Any ideas? Someone shout at me. Mandy, shout at me. Dust, plaster dust, yep. Cool. All sorts of dust is out there, isn't it? Welding fumes. Anyone employ welders? No one puts a hand up in this room. I think I'll stop asking that. I think you're all scared of me. I'm not that bad. My bark's far worse than my bite. What else do we have, guys? Wood dust, welding fumes, solvents, silica, asbestos. Is that it? Okay. So anything in the air, okay, which is pretty much dust for a lot of you. Noise. Is it noisy at work? No, there's no noise in here. Right, okay. It is noisy. Fatigue. Who gets tired? I'm bloody tired standing up here at this hour of the morning. For those of you who know me, I'm not a morning person by any stretch of the imagination. Are you going to cough soon, Craig? No. Good on you. Fatigue. Who's seen the water bottles that the inspectors have been throwing around? Oh, brilliant. Some of you put your hand out, thank God. There's a simple message around that, around eating, sleeping and drinking lots of water. When we first started doing the water bottles a couple of years ago, I think it was, we went onto a lot of sites and the guys had no water. That was the only water they had seen all day. That's appalling. And this was December. It was warm. So they were glugging the water down and we were giving them extra bottles as well. We've seen a shift in that time, that a lot of sites are now bringing their own water on. All sites must have access to fresh water that you can drink. And there is an improvement there. So we're getting there. And people are tired out there. I think you all work really, really hard, actually. And you work long days. And some of you work 6 days a week. So you do get tired and you have to look after yourself. Some of the workers I speak to, because I do toolbox talks, if any of you want me to rock up and do a toolbox talk, do feel free to give us a yell. I can do that. And so can our inspectors. I usually pick on them and they dive for cover, but they do it. And I say to people, have you eaten a vegetable this week? It's pretty basic, hey? And a lot of them going, no, I don't know when I last saw a vegetable. One site I went on to, they all ate 2-minute noodles. That's what they lived on. Pretty bad, eh? So it's going on a lot out there. So some really, really basic stuff. Fatigue's a biggie. Manage it. You've got to try and manage it and get some help. Alcohol and drugs. There's so many pissed people on site, aren't there? What's today? Is it Friday? When was payday? Was it last night? I won't ask who's got a hangover. No one will put their hand up anyway. I will guarantee you that if a drug van went round today and did alcohol and drug testing on site, they will find a good, I don't know how many, probably 20 at least, people who are pissed or drugged on site. Now, we haven't killed anybody in Canterbury with the rebuild, and it was predicted that we would kill 2 people every year. So in theory, we should have killed about 8 people. Would that be right? We haven't killed anybody. But if we continue the way we are with alcohol and drugs on site, we will kill people, quite simply. And we could potentially kill 8 people this year. They're not being managed on site. They need to be managed. And we are here to help you with that as well. So that brochure that Craig was flying around before, grab it, have a look at it, and some of the service providers here will help you with that as well. And I know I'm going on about it, but it's just, I saw a group of guys the other morning when I was in town. I just had a piano lesson with my son. We were having a coffee, and it was about just after 9. And this group of workers, about 10 of them, all in their high vis, they all came and sat down and they go, oh, that was a hard night last night. And they were still pissed. They had a huge breakfast, and then they all said, oh, shit, we feel a hell of a lot better now. Then they all stood up and went to work. They were all hungover. And that's not unusual, okay? Get that sorted, guys. I know it's not easy, but get those people off site. They probably won't kill themselves, but they'll kill someone else. The regulations, I'm not going to go on about these. The regulations are purely there to assist you with your health monitoring and your occupational health programs. And Craig's glaring at me now probably, so I better keep going. They're there to help you. So look, there's lots of things that the regulations outline for you around monitoring, but the bottom line is if you get someone competent and experienced and qualified to help you with your health monitoring, they will do all these things for you, okay? But remember, the main focus of this is about risk and managing risks, managing your hazards out there. So lots of things there. And just keep the workers in the loop. They do have a right to their results. They have a right to the report. They have a right to know what any recommendations were. You do need to keep them in the loop. Really important to talk to them. And make sure you get a copy of the report from the provider, and any recommendations, please do take them on board. As a service provider, they can't do what we do and issue you notices and say this must be done. But pretty much what I suggest is that you take those recommendations as something that must be done. They're being more polite than I would be. I would write you a notice and say this has to be done. But the service providers don't have that regulatory authority that we do, so they will suggest that you do it. But the suggestions are definitely there to be taken on board. Now you have to keep the health monitoring records yourself. You must keep them for 30 years, unless it's asbestos records and you keep them for 40. And that's me. So maybe questions at the end, if anyone's got any, and I'll hand over to you, Craig.